All right, you're live, we're live, and you are on Coffee with Kim, Torah with Kim this afternoon. I'm excited to be with you over the issues that we're going to be talking about. Today is, in the synagogue, we're reading the Torah portion, Shemini. And I'm just going to tie in a little thought with the issue of Syria. And we're going to be talking about Syria. Hi, Debbie. Hi, Linda. Shavua Tov, Debbie. And we're not quite there yet. It's the afternoon here in Florida. But I will be back in Israel, Debbie, in 2 weeks. So we'll see you then. Anyways, of course, the big news over the weekend, yesterday, today, the U.S., along with Britain and France, have attacked chemical outposts, we're going to put it that way, or the T-4 base that we talked about even last week in our interview with Joe Kaufman. We know that they have made an attack targeting very, very specific sites in Syria that have to do with chemical weapons. However, there's always more to the story. And because normally I would be talking today about the Torah portion Shemini, and because we have already covered the Torah portion Shemini, I thought what we would do is we would talk today about Syria. And even the relationship biblically that we find between Israel and Syria for just a moment. Also, the specific areas that are being targeted right now. Now, one of the things that I want to mention to you is in the Torah portion Shemini, we actually talk about the first, I'm going to pull that up, just hold on 1 second, I have to do a little maneuvering here. We actually talk about one of the first sacrifices that is made after the construction of the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And this is a very, very important sacrifice because it is specifically for the purpose of atoning for the golden calf. Now, there might be those of you that are like, oh, we've gone from Syria to the Torah portion. What's the connection? Hold on. All right. So I want to just touch base on that and then make the connection. All right. So we have in this portion, and we're actually in Leviticus chapter 9 in our Torah portion, and it talks about the calling of the elders, Aaron, his sons, this is before the strange fire, and the sacrifice that's going to be made in conjunction with the appearance of the glory of the Lord. And so Moses goes on in this portion to explain that what's called the Kavod Adonai, the glory of the Lord, would appear before Israel after Aaron offered the Chatat, which is the sin offering for the golden calf. And with that, the Olah, and the ascending of the smoke offering that would then recall the sacrifice of Isaac by Abraham. Now we know that Abraham did not sacrifice Isaac, but it would bring to remembrance when that smoke ascended from the offering of the Chatat, the offering in place to atone for, the golden calf. When that smoke would arise, it would bring to the Lord's remembrance the sacrifice of Isaac to Abraham, because in that moment, the Lord, all right, provided and saw himself as the sacrifice in that moment. And it was right then, after, he knew that he could trust Abraham with the covenant, that God sealed the covenant forever between the house of Israel and God. Done. And it was right at that point. So what was being remembered when the smoke went up with the chatat, or from the chatat, the offering that was made after the Mishkan was finished and for the atoning of the Israelites because of the golden calf, what was remembered was the covenant that God made with Abraham. And so, how important was this? Well, first, we know that this covenant is what ultimately spares Israel and keeps God from wiping them out after the golden calf. I mean, here he does all these mighty works, brings them out of Mitzrayim, brings them out of Egypt, and he brings them into the wilderness. They're on their way to the promised land, and now they're chavatching, they're making all these complaints. And then when Moses goes up to obtain the 10 milim, the 10 words, the 10 commandments, and he was up there for 40 days, the people couldn't wait, they were impatient, and they replace their experience, manifest wonders and signs and everything God does for them with a golden calf. So, the Torah reads, all right, take for yourself a bull calf. All right, there it is. Kach lecha. All right, Egel ben Bakar. For a sin offering, that's Leviticus 9 and 2. Notice that the offering is made together with the whole burnt offering of the lamb to recall that sacrifice, the Akedah, which is very, very central in Jewish prayer. And of course, a foreshadowing of the Messiah. So, now we have this golden calf experience. And one of the problems that we have later in Israel's history is that Ephraim, all right, Ephraim and Syria and the kings of Syria form an alliance. Ephraim represents the 10 northern tribes of Israel. And this alliance, of course, and the rebellion of the kings of Israel that are living in Samaria causes them to set up 2 golden calves after the death of Solomon. This incident absolutely splits the kingdom in half. The northern kingdom is the 10 lost tribes. Well, they're not lost yet, but it's the 10 tribes. And the southern kingdom, of course, is Judah. Judah, Benjamin, and Simeon. Now, this northern kingdom is in alliance with the Syrian kings. And ultimately, because of their rebellion and because of this alliance, and it's an alliance of idolatry, and God hates idols. And we see over and over again that idolatry brings judgment when indeed the idolatry is taking place in and amidst the house of Israel. So this relationship with Syria ultimately backfires for Israel because of their idolatry. And God calls King Ben-Hadad, and we know the wicked king of Ahaz, all right, from Israel. We know these kings, and I'm not going to go into the details of this, but ultimately Syria comes in, and Assyria, and really takes away the northern kingdom, and they are taken away and banished into oblivion. They're sold as slaves, and God ultimately, he says, he divorces this kingdom, the 10 lost tribes, and they're truly lost. They're assimilated first into the Middle East, but because of trade, we find that assimilation to expand into the world. However, what becomes so interesting after all of this, and these 10 tribes being lost, etc., 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 because of this, there comes a point where God really speaks to the prophet Jeremiah, and he says, I want my kids back. I want them back. And I'm going to make a covenant to ensure that they come back. And if you read in Jeremiah 30, 31, 32, 33, you're going to find that the new covenant that God is promising is centered around the restoration of his relationship with Ephraim. Absolutely staggering to follow this. It's not just truth, it's revelation from the covenants of Abraham to even the covenant of the Brit HaChadashah, the new covenant, because this new covenant was not new. It was already talked about, already prophesied about, numerous places. However, in the book of Yirmiyahu, in Jeremiah, we see the true intent of this covenant, which was to restore the house of Israel in its totality. Not just the house of Judah, but even the house of Yosef, of course, and the stick of Judah and the stick of Yosef are also discussed in the book of Ezekiel. So when we tie these two together, plus the remez, the hints that exist in the Torah and in all of the other writings of the prophets, we have something that is absolutely mind-blowing. So here we are. Interesting situation, because now we see that restoration of this work with Ephraim is going to ultimately bring about the restoration of national Israel, which is what we have today. And who is going to come back in to play in the end of days? It is Syria. So when we look at the Syrian crisis that we have right now, I want you to know this is not just a Middle East war or a little blurb in time amidst all of the wars that are taking place in the earth today. And there's quite a few. I mean, they're in I can't remember the number we had looked up last time. Somebody will have to look that up. But there's so many wars going on. Well, this is not just a blurb. This little situation that we see happening here in Syria. And let me say, every development that takes place that has Israel centered, or centers around Israel, let me put it that way. Nothing's by happen chance. And even the decision that was made by President Trump and the allies, of course, with the acknowledgement of Israel and even Turkey was warned. This is a chess move, folks. And it's a chess move I want to talk about for a few minutes. And you can see in the background today, we have a little map of the area. And one of the reasons we have this map is because the other day when I was giving the talk on the interview with Joe Kaufman, we talked about homes, and I was like, you guys don't want to know really where that is. And afterwards, I'm like, I got to tell these people where that is. So let me make that transition here from the little overview of the offering of the sin of the golden calf in our Torah portion, Shemini, to ultimately that taking us to the destruction of the northern tribes and the abandonment and of the northern tribes under the Syrian regime due to the sin of the golden calf continuing, ultimately to the restoration of the 10 tribes, or the plan to get them back, and then the restoration of national Israel. So we just took you through all that. And now we're going to talk about these airstrikes, why they have happened, and where and why that could be important to us or to those that are interested in biblical prophecy. All right, is everybody following me so far? Can I get some thumbs up? I think some people are going to be like, oh, we're kind of all over the place. I hope not, but I hope you were able to follow me through some of that. All right, now let's take a look. Here, I'm going to stand up. I know I have it like enlarged, so like we're bigger than life here. All right, a lot of the area that you have seen happening with bombing and shelling and ISIS has been along this border right up in here. You've heard the terms Aleppo, Raqqa, all right? And what we have just seen take place actually is in the bombing over in the Homs, the chemical area. That's somewhere right over in that area. And what happened in the chemical attack that happens to be the catalyst for this most recent assault on Syria's chemical weapons arsenals, all right, happened in this place called Duma, right here. Now, Duma is about 10 kilometers from Damascus. And Damascus is the capital of Syria. What's interesting about Damascus, let me just sit down here for a minute. I'm going to pull up a couple of passages. Damascus has a fairly interesting place in Scripture, and so does even Duma. Believe it or not, Duma is mentioned in the book of Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 21, it even talks about the burden of Duma. Now, this could be referring to, there's a Duma that's near Hebron. There's a Duma that's actually really along the desert area of Saudi Arabia. And there is the Duma of Syria. And so, but notably, the scripture talks about the burden of Duma. And it says here, he calleth to me out of Seir, Mount Seir. He calleth to me as a watchman. What of the night? Watchman, what of the night? And so we're going to come back to that passage in just a minute. I'm going to take you first over to Damascus chapter 17 in the book of Isaiah. Now, because that's the burden of Damascus, and the burden of Damascus precedes the burden of Duma in the writing of the scriptures here. So let me pull that up. We have it in Damascus center stage here. I want to talk about Isaiah chapter 17. It says, the burden of Damascus. Behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. The cities of Aurora are forsaken. They shall be for flocks which shall lie down, and none of them shall make them afraid. Now listen to the next line. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus, and the remnant of Syria. They shall be as the glory of the children of Israel, saith the Lord of hosts. And in that day, now anytime you see in the scripture, in that day, it is talking about this day. Now, we see certain patterns that happen actually several times throughout history. This being one of them, of course, with all of the different nations and armies that have conquered the Middle East in this area. However, when you read this specific term, we know that it's also referring to something in the future, and that is a time and a place when national Israel will come back on the scene. So that is in our day. So it says, and in that day it shall come to pass that the glory of Jacob shall be made thin, the fatness of his flesh shall wax lean. And we have seen that actually happen. And then it goes on to say, and it shall be as when the harvestman gathereth the corn and reapeth the ears of his arm, and it shall be as he that gathereth ears in the valley of Rephaim. All right, so I'm going to stop there because this takes us into some other areas. I want to just go right back to the burden of Damascus. There are many that are Bible scholars that truly believe, and I've mentioned this before, that the next big event that is going to take place in biblical prophecy is going to be the destruction of Damascus. And the way that this desolation is written about in these passages, it would appear that it had to do with chemical or nuclear warfare because it's just destroyed, okay? So when we look at that possibility, and we see things like what we just saw happen over the last 48 hours, and that is literally the shelling of these chemical weapons posts all being over an issue that took place in Douma, which is only 10 kilometers, very, very close to Damascus. You see how close the burden is getting to Damascus. I mean, we are getting closer and closer to Damascus every day. And of course, who lives there? And that's the capital. And of course, now we can also always look at Bashar Assad and the removal of Assad and what would take place after that. All right, let me just let you in on another interesting little tidbit about Damascus. All right, Damascus in and of itself means silent is the sackcloth weaver. Now that is a very, very interesting statement. Silent is the sackcloth weaver, especially because the word Duma means silence. In fact, silence that is caused by death. And so, interestingly, what we just saw take place in Douma, or heard about, we didn't actually see it, but we've seen the results of it, the chemical weapons attack, all right, killed over 70 individuals. Now, there's some very interesting conflicting reports about this chemical weapons attack. One of the reports, and many of the reports, state that this attack was from the Assad regime. There are others that are on and have done videos that said the attack actually didn't come from Assad. It came from Jassal, let me just make sure I have it here. I think it's Jamal, let's see if I've got it here. Jamal al-Islam, I believe. Hold on a second, let's see. I can't believe Jamal al-Islam. Let me just see. Jamal al-Islam. This is I believe this is the organization. Hold on, folks. I'm not going to give you the wrong information. So, let me just double check. Jaish al-Islam. All right, there it is. The Army of Islam. Thank you for waiting for me. All right. And so they believe they are the ones that launched this attack. However, there's a huge discrepancy here, and the discrepancy comes in the fact that right after the chemical weapons attack, the Syrian army moved Jaish al-Islam out of Duma. In other words, they fled, and they moved them into another city. And so because that discrepancy, the discrepancy that appears to be here is the fact that if indeed Jaish al-Islam did the attack to get the sympathies of the United States and those that think they're a more moderate terrorist group and make it look like this took place from the Assad regime, then why indeed would it had already been in place for the Assad regime to forcibly move Jaish al-Islam out of there to another city? That's where the discrepancy comes in. So when you're looking at both sides of the story, you have to look at that which is obscure. And that which is obscure is the fact that the Syrian army, or Assad's regime, came in and moved Jaish al-Islam forcibly, and it was right after the chemical weapons attack. So it appears that if you take a look at the evidence that this attack would have come from the Assad regime, and it would have deeply affected the Jaish al-Islam, not only the community, which, this is a terrorist community, I don't want to say anything else, but also they had taken, they had basically already had individuals that were being held or kidnapped from a neighboring area, to try and leverage the situation. So this is kind of the scene behind that, and they're saying, a lot of people, well, the people that were killed were the people that had already been taken and were being harbored and kidnapped by this Jaish al-Islam. These were the people that were killed. And yet, once again, we have this deep discrepancy between both the account where people are saying this was Jaish al-Islam, but nobody wants to recognize it, and this was the Assad regime. So my take on that, all right, is it doesn't matter who did the chemical weapons. Ultimately, it always will come down to whoever governs a state or a nation. So it's not who did this attack. The president of a state or a nation will ultimately always have to take responsibility for what happens in his country. So even if it happened, then Assad is going to have to take responsibility for the fact that it happened in his country. If he was the perpetrator, which it does, the evidence does point to that more and more, then he needs to know there are consequences for using chemical weapons, and we know that all of that was banned by the international community after World War I and World War II. So there is consequences. And so whether they say it was a fake attack or not, it wasn't fake in the sense that it was a real attack. So whether they say one is blaming the other or the other blaming the other, all right, it doesn't matter. The fact that chemical weapons are available and being used in Syria means there has to be intervention. And there are very few that will intervene, one, because of the stronghold of Iran and Russia in the area, and number two, because for many, there's already so much terrorism and so much death that the value of human life, and the value of human life in Islam is not high, okay? We see this with the fact that so many of these terrorist organizations are willing to put the women and the children, use them in human shields, to actually pay their children to be suicide bombers. There's very, very limited value of human life in Islam. And so because of that, most of these tribes and nations would not act when something like this took place. However, that doesn't hold true for the United States. You see, we and Israel value human life. And we love the Syrian people. And when we see something like this, and when we have warned a country, and we warned them, and we bombed last year, if you recall, we bombed another facility, okay, and a base because of the use of chemical weapons under the Assad regime. So if they didn't get the message a year ago, and they've done it again, we have to act. What would happen? How would even it be perceived even in the eyes of God if a nation has the ability to curtail something like this and turns a blind eye when God says you've got to watch out for the women and the orphans and the children? It would be a travesty if we allowed this to continue. So President Trump took a very strong stand, and even, I guess, against the advice of Mattis, but with a coalition to go in and actually take out, there were several chemical sites in between these two areas. In fact, there were 3 real chemical sites that we're talking about. So, and we targeted them and we bombed them. Now, after that, of course, what we saw happen, all right, is both Iran and Moscow go immediately to the UN Security Council, and they were denied really any recourse on this matter, which I was a little shocked that happened. So I want to kind of sketchily go over some of the fallout right now and some of the things that are being said and what we could expect to see happen. All right. Well, first of all, Russia's in the area. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot happen per se. However, all right, let me read to you the Debka file. And I will just share with you. Hold on just 1 minute. Let me get the Debka file here. All right, we had, first of all, all right, let's see. Now I'm just deciding which to share with you first, so just hold on. Don't anybody go anywhere. All right, all right. Okay. First, in light of the fact that the Pentagon has said that the U.S. and its allies, the U.K. and France, has hit every target successfully. All right. Come on. Just waiting for it to reboot. Come on. Come on, come on, come on. All right. I'm going to just, kind of give you just a basic here on what's happened. So when they knew these targets were coming, all right, first of all, Syria emptied its air bases. Hezbollah withdrew from Lebanon. Okay. Next. All right. Okay. Okay, the next thing that happened, Israel declared a no-fly zone over the Golan and the east of the Jordan River. So everything in the north that would be down here by Israel was declared a no-fly zone. So there were no commercial flights or any smaller flights that could fly over this area in preparation for the attack. All right. As I mentioned, Putin put in an urgent call to the UN Security Council, which any recourse was denied. He did say, and they continue to say, that the chemical attack was a fake. And so we go on from there. And then what followed, I'm trying to pull it up. I had it up. So we said it, I don't know where it went. Oh, well, folks. I had a whole list up, and who knows where it went. And right now, nothing's coming up. So, okay. I might lose a couple of you. All right. I can't get anything to come up. All right. Okay, let's see. If I can just get the one. Here we go. Oh. I had everything prepared. It just disappeared. That does happen. All right. Okay. Yeah, I can't get it up. I do not know why, but I just, here, let me try it this way. So, how's everybody doing today? Oh my goodness. I had my whole layout here, and it's gone. So I was going to give you a count by count here of the review on what we could see next. Yeah. Okay, so the last thing that we did see then is we actually saw the last thing being Russia. The UN Council reject Russia's request to call this the force used by I might have it. Hold on. Finally. All right, we're back. Thank you for waiting, everybody. Okay, here we go. Now I'm going to go through it. All right. Okay. So, let me just give you just the list here. While the media reports abounded about Moscow's non-reprisal for the U.S.-led attacks, Moscow was quietly getting ready, and this is what you need to know, to confront the U.S. and its allies. So heavy Russian strategic Tu-95 and Tu-22M bombers were deployed Thursday to air bases in Iran, thereby cutting their flying time to Syria and Iraq by at least 4 hours. So in preparation for what was going to be taking place in the bombing of these chemical sites, Russia moved heavy-duty, fast-flying bombers into Iran, the Iranian air base that was very, very close and convenient to be able to go into Syria if need be. All right, next, what happened was the Russian firefighters were transiting the Bosporus Straits Friday and Saturday in full sight of intelligence surveillance laden with new military equipment for the Syrian army. All right, after that, the U.S. care in limiting its operation essentially to 3 sites where the Bashar al-Assad army base was clandestinely making and stockpiling chemical weapons served Moscow's purpose. Assad still retains substantial quantities of poison weapons even after these sites were struck by more than 100 missiles. He is still capable of using them again and will not be deterred from doing so if he thinks the regime is in danger. So that is the assessment of intelligence regarding the outcome of what just happened. The U.S.-led operation was best and beset by controversy, again, between President Donald Trump and the Defense Secretary Jim Mattis, which we just talked about. And had it been up to Mattis, it wouldn't have been launched, okay? But what they do expect, all right, they predicted that Russia and Iran would not take the missile assault lying down, and a single dimensional strike would be the catalyst for a full-scale U.S. war with Russia on Syrian soil. Mattis tried to put the brakes on the operation on Saturday morning by calling it a one-time shot, but then President Trump stated on TV, "We are prepared to sustain this response until the Syrian regime stops its use of prohibited chemical agents." And so, next, of course, Trump now has, replaced Secretary of State Tillerson, and he has the support now of the new National Security Advisor, John Bolton. So, John Bolton, he's excellent. And he will be able to assess this situation, whether or not there would be a need for widening the military action in Syria and further strikes. But for right now, if you listen to President Trump, it does not appear that we're going to widen this, that instead we are actually going probably to see what now is the response to the 3 areas that were hit and targeted the other day. And so it goes on to say in the very end of this, let's just talk about Russia. The Russian information machine, and that's propaganda. Nobody likes to use the word propaganda, so now they'll say the information machine, But the Russian information machine was already at work before noon on Saturday when Colonel General Sergei Radusky of the Russian military's general staff maintained that Syria's Russian-made air defense system downed 71 out of the 103 missiles launched by the U.S. and allies in Syria with the help of the monitoring by Russian air defense assets, but without the direct engagement of any Russian missiles. This was the message to Washington that a fresh wave of strikes in Syria would encounter direct Russian engagement. The Russian general also claimed that the only minor damage was caused by the first wave. So that is a very different account and report than is coming out of the Pentagon. But once again, as Debka has noted, this is part of the propaganda machine. Saying, and you saw this in Germany, you've seen this in wars, they'll say, nothing's happening, we were able to curtail this attack, nobody really was affected, and in the meantime, great inroads were made at doing a lot of damage to those 3 chemical plants. Russian defense officials also threatened that Russia would resume discussions with Syria and other countries over the sale of modern S-300 air defense systems to protect against future U.S. strikes. So there you have it. That is right now what is taking place, or the response from Moscow. So we will watch. I have a long and a very lengthy also report on what took place. I'm going to post this report on Coffee with Kim. So you can go in and read it for yourself. This is the most up-to-date report that we have on what's going on from Israel. So you can go in and read that, of course, in the Coffee with Kim group. So if you're not a member, you want to be a member of that, because we post all of this as it's breaking. So you can go right away and read what's going on. Thank you, Linda, for all your posting. So here we are. We are very, very close to seeing a potential confrontation in and around the area of Damascus. So for all of you that are the Bible scholars and those that want to understand Bible prophecy in the end time, what you are seeing right now, as I said, is another great chess move. And the first chess move was under the Obama administration, and seeing the collapse of a lot of the Arab regimes around and surrounding Israel. And the only regime that did not collapse, by the way, is Bashar Assad. So, and under the Obama administration, the door was opened, wide open, to bring Russia into the fray. Russia was already a player, a very big player, by the way, but they were playing behind the scenes with Iran and Syria. But Obama and his failure to do what he said he would do and draw the red line of the use of chemical warfare brought Russia in. So now we have Russia, Iran, and Syria as an axis in this area. That is, as I've mentioned numerous times, right out of the book of Ezekiel. And we see that this is the development of that ultimate Gog and Magog war, the big war that is coming. Preceding that war, there will be smaller developments. And one of those developments is centered around Damascus. Now that Russia is in, and now that United States under President Trump is back in the game with Israel and the axis of Saudi Arabia, the U.S. and Israel, and of course there's other players on both sides, there's other players, but these are the main players. Now you see the potential of the clash that could ultimately bring significant damage to Damascus. Now, according to Scripture, that damage to Damascus can very well play into the actual Gog and Magog war that we read about in Ezekiel. Because instead of it curtailing war, it causes the Arab nations and alliances to shift once again, and to even strengthen these axes that are coming against each other, to ultimately bring a much greater war. And so that's why we're really looking at Damascus. And we're looking at the issues and the chemical weapons and the use of chemical weapons so close to Damascus in Duma at this time. For those of you that are interested in biblical prophecy. For the rest, you're interested in, oh my God, what's going to happen with the U.S., don't worry about us. Folks, we're not going in there and we're not going to do some stupid stuff like we did with Iraq. At least I hope so. I don't think we are. What we did was very noble with Iraq to get Saddam Hussein out. However, what we didn't do right is we didn't make sure that that vacuum was filled properly, and we actually stayed in way too long. And so we made some grave mistakes. I do not see us repeating those same mistakes in this region of Syria, but who knows? I could be completely wrong on that. And we might do the same stupid thing. But I do think that the president just wanted to go in and say, listen, we're not going to tolerate chemical warfare, period. And this is our response to what just happened and the death of 70 people and just awful agony of those that have been affected by the use of chemical weapons. And as I mentioned before, and just this past week in our talk, I have to say I have met with Iraqis that have been victims of the use of Saddam Hussein's chemical weapons. And I can tell you it's not a pretty sight. And to see how it affected and it just virtually destroyed the lives of these precious, precious people is enough for us to really understand we have a moral responsibility that we cannot allow, whether it is Bashar Assad and his regime, or even, if it is Jaish al-Islam, what is considered a moderate terrorist group. We can't allow these groups to have use or access to chemical weapons. And the scriptures does say that Syria will be like that of the children of Israel, which means that there will come a day when the people of Syria will be free once again. There will come a day. Like the children of Israel were delivered from Egypt and they were freed. There will come a day, the scripture says, when the Syrian people, it will be like in the days of the glory of God. They will be free and they will not be under a horrific and torturous regime. And may it be so in our day. So, on that note, everyone, I have got to leave. And so I want to see, thank you, Linda. Stephen City Rogers, so good to see you. I miss you. Oh my. Rachel, good to see all of you. In fact, I don't know. Let me see if I can. If I sit down, I don't think I can. I don't know how I'm going to get to you. Let me just lean. I know you're not going to look at my face. All right. All right. Erica Love, good to see you. Genevieve, good to see you. Let's see. Robert Setzman, good to see you. Celesca, Christine, Curtis, Kathy, John, Crystal. So good to see you, Crystal. How are you? All right, Aaron Amsbury, Rebecca, good to see you, Aaron. Rebecca, great to see you. Joyce, oh my goodness, I hope you're doing well. Make sure you IM me. I'm thinking of you, and I want to make sure you're doing okay. Jay Ramos, good to see you. Paulette, good to see you. Harry Bunch, Twyla, Gloria, Cindy, aloha from Hawaii, good to see you. Stephanie, hey, my beautiful friend too. William Rivera, good to see you. Anne, Rachel, Ginger, Deborah, Patty, Zach, good to see you. Zach and Paola, hi, aloha to you too from Hawaii. All right, Linda Cruz, my dear friend. Here we are. Barbara, good to see you, Barbara. I hope you're doing well. Ann Van Geem, good to see you. Tina, and I think Keith Phillips, good to see you. Lauren, and all right. Oh my goodness, Keith and Shashina Reynolds, it's so good to hear from you. Judy, Alan, Aaron, and Carlene, and Arnold. Hi, Twyla, Philip. Oh, well, look at who's here. Philip Dunlap, Huerta. It is so good to see you, my friend. Oh, my God. Mr. Phyllis, it has been so long. It is so good to see you. Dennis Cameron and Linda McLean, great to see you, Linda. And, oh, we're back to Debbie. Esther, hey, Esther, it's so good to see you. Timothy Ireland. And Jack Hart, Neela. Hey, Jack, good to see you. It's been so long. And so here we are, Linda Rowan and Debbie. So it's so good to see you, Debbie, my sweetheart. All right, Rosie and Gary, so good. All right. All right, guys, I got to fly. It's been, I apologize for the lags. Sometimes technology, I lose stuff I prepared. So. And I know that was kind of a, how do we connect all this Bible stuff? And I don't want to really do that too much when we're also talking about war, but hopefully you can see that there's a little bit of a connection. And I don't want to go overboard either to tell you that this is the thing that's going to lead to that war and destruction. No, I just want to give you some small connections that you can just keep your eye on, a little bit of that which is obscure, so you can, make a decision for yourself, what's really going on. And yeah, we'll see. I'll keep you updated this week, I promise. I will keep you updated. We are praying, and remember, please pray for our military, pray for Israel, pray for our president. These are not easy decisions for any leader to make. And of course, there's still a very deep wound in our country over the Iraq issue. So it's a little scary for a lot of people for us to be doing this. But I think in light of what's taken place, I think we've actually just made a statement. And I think we did the right thing if we're looking at not closing our eyes to a serious moral problem in the earth. So on that note, have a great remainder of the Shabbat, and I will talk to you all during the week. All right. Let me know if you like the map. And again, also, I do believe we have a special sale ending, I think today. It ends today, but we have a very, very special sale. If you don't have any one of my courses from either regeneratenow.com or our Passover, the Why Passover, the Passover Connection course, or the 4 Essential course, all right? We have a very, very special sale during the counting of the Omer. It's called Omer, and if you put that in, you will get a very, very significant discount. So you want to make sure you grab those courses where you can while they're on sale like this. And if you want to know more about them, just go to I'll make sure we get that link up there. Linda, maybe you could do that. Networkingthey.co. All my courses are listed on that front page. You can check them out. Remember, when you're checking out, type in the coupon code OMER, and you will get a significant, I believe, 50% discount for just, I think it was 3 days. So I think that's up today. All right, everybody. Until then, it has been a blessing, and we will talk to you next week. All right. God bless. Bye-bye. Oh, now how am I going to get you off? Oh, I gotta finish.